Today we're going to be talking about how vaccines work, which to me is really fascinating. Live from the Hive, I'm Dr. B, and this is The Buzz on an intro to vaccines. There's a lot of confusion about how vaccines work, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's so simple it took a long time to figure out, and humans should be really proud that we ever did work this out in the first place. The basic idea is what you give someone is something that looks like a bad disease. The body mounts an immune response to it so that if the real disease ever tries to get into you, you're already ready and your defenses are already set up to take care of the problem before it causes an illness. Edward Jenner was an English physician and scientist who figured this out back in 1796. And what he was doing was he was comparing the diseases cowpox and smallpox. And at that time, smallpox was a leading cause of death worldwide. It was killing off about 10% of the world's population every single year. What Jenner noticed was that milkmaids who had cowpox, which causes a nasty skin infection, causes some nasty skin sores and scarring, it doesn't kill you. But what he noticed was that people who had this milder disease became immune to smallpox, which, like I said, was a very dangerous disease, overwhelmed the body's immune response, and was very often fatal. So basically, you get cowpox, you're going to be fine and not get smallpox later in life. And that's because these two viruses look so similar on a microscopic scale that the antibodies you make to one actually covered for the other disease. So what he did then was pretty crazy, real mad scientist kind of stuff, and completely unethical by our modern standards. But he took 8-year-old little James Phipps and injected him with some material that came from a cowpox sore on his mother's arm. And then he exposed the child later to smallpox, and the kid didn't come down with smallpox. He was the first person to be made immune in a synthetic way to a major deadly disease. This, like I said, was completely unethical, but it was completely brilliant. And it's estimated that Jenner has saved more people in history than any other scientist or any other physician. So how does this system work? Well, this is a grand oversimplification, but let's say you have the cowpox virus here trying to sneak in. It gets into the body. It's picked up by an immune system cell that eats it up. It figures out that this thing shouldn't be there. We don't recognize the markers that are on the surface of this virus, and so we're going to make antibodies to it. These cells make antibodies. These antibodies float around the bloodstream, and they start sticking to this virus and marking it for destruction. The virus is killed off. And by the way, this works for viruses and bacteria. It's the same kind of system. But the virus is killed off. These cells still hang around making antibodies, waiting for it to try to come in again. If it ever does come in again, these antibodies are there. They mark it for destruction, and it's taken care of. Now, smallpox looks very similar to cowpox, and it has very, very similar surface markers. And what do you know? They tried to put this into James Phipps. He was already immune to cowpox. These antibodies were waiting, and they attached to the smallpox virus and wiped it out before James could get sick, and thereby saving his life. So Edward Jenner puts this kid at massive risk, but he also makes sure that he has plenty of antibodies to take care of this. So this is great. Over the next 200 years, this was refined. It was given to many, many people. And now, actually, since the 70s, we haven't had any more smallpox. It has been eradicated from the earth. And you will see in older people like me, they have a scar on the back. I think it's on the back of my left arm. That's from having the smallpox vaccine. People don't get that anymore, so you won't see that scar. So you can actually tell how old someone is based on whether or not they have that scar. Now, they were very lucky to have two different diseases, cowpox and smallpox, that looked alike enough that they could figure out how this immune system reaction worked and how to create immunity without exposing someone to smallpox. We don't have that anymore. We don't have whooping cough and less dangerous whooping cough. We don't have hepatitis B and less dangerous hepatitis B. So what we do these days is, instead of taking an entire virus and sticking it in there, what you might do is, one, you might inactivate the virus chemically, kill it, or you might just take a piece of the virus or bacteria and put that into a vaccine, so that when the immune system sees these little surface proteins, it says, hey, eats them up, says, let's make some antibodies to that. It makes antibodies to that. And then if the entire virus or bacteria tries to get in at a later date, the real virus or bacteria, the immune system already has these antibodies and it'll kill the actual virus or whole bacteria before it can cause any kind of damage. That's basically how the modern vaccines work. We're giving you something that doesn't cause the disease, but looks enough like the disease so that you mount an immune response and you never get sick. Now, some viruses can be very clever and change what they look like on the surface so that they don't get attacked by the immune system. The flu virus is the classic example of it. And one year it might come in with this shape of protein on the surface, and the next year it has that. It's a little bit different. And now these antibodies show up and they go, we can't attach to that. We don't know what the heck that is. And you get sick. So what they have to do is actually predict what type of surface protein is going to be on the flu virus for the next year. And that's why sometimes you get a really great, oh man, we got it exactly right. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's not a great match. They chose the wrong type of surface protein. And that vaccine for that year may not work very well. The good news is at some point, and they already are starting to find them, there are some proteins on the surface that don't change. And what'll happen if we can make a vaccine to that little protein that doesn't change is we will have one flu vaccine that you get. You don't have to get it every year because it's not going to change. That's still a few years off, but we will be at some point getting just one flu shot, maybe a booster, and then you're done. You won't have to get it every year like we recommend. Well, that's it for an intro to Edward Jenner and how vaccines work in general. Next time, we're going to talk about the vaccines we recommend in our office and safety concerns that people have. We're going to have a frequently asked questions session on vaccines, so you don't want to miss that one. My opinion on some of these may surprise you, but I just want to give people my opinion on how these things work and how, in general, doctors feel about vaccines. Don't miss it. You all know me, I'm Dr. B, and this has been The Buzz on Parenting and Pediatrics. We'll see you all soon.